Hello, everyone. How are you? Good morning. I know it's really early. At least it's really early for me, so I guess for you as well. And I'm here to talk to you about Angular 2. I just put the new Horizon to make the title a little bit more trendy because it looks good, but it's basically an Angular 2 talk. So before starting, let me introduce myself. My name is Martin Gontovnikas, but since we're in the tech world, everybody knows each other by the Twitter handle. So my Twitter handle is mgonto. So if you want to follow me and increase my ego, I would be greatly appreciated. So I am a software developer from Buenos Aires, Argentina, as you can maybe notice from my accent. And I work at a company called Auth0. Auth0 is a SaaS that helps you with authentication and authorization. So if you want to add to your application like logins with Facebook, Twitter, username and password, Active Directory, or stuff like that, you can do it. If you want to know more about it, you can come talk to me later on, but I won't talk about that now. And I used to be there coding JavaScript all day long, so this was me. Just hammering the keyboard, pa, pa, pa. But now I work as a developer advocate. Unfortunately not with Al Pacino. I love him. All his movies are awesome. And a lot of people ask me, what does a developer advocate do? So I kind of did that when I was 17 years old. I was already on stage with a microphone, but this was singing in a karaoke. Now, instead of that, I actually, whoa. Well, I don't do black screen, sorry. Let's see, maybe it's like this moved. Magic. So again, I was in a karaoke and singing, but now I kind of do that around the world in different conferences, and in order to speak, I still have to code, because if I don't code, I don't know what I'm speaking about. So let's start, right? But before starting, since this is like really early, you get like this. It's like, yeah, I'm sleepy, so what should we do? And I thought in flashy lights, because flashy lights always wake people up, right? So you can sit for like 10 seconds, try to wake up with this, and then the other thing that we're doing before starting is t-shirt time. I brought a couple of t-shirts, so I always wanted to throw them out of stage. I don't see much. I think it's on purpose, just so that I don't get nervous. So I'll do something like this. And I have, let's throw like 4, why not? Well, upstairs requires me to be a sportsman, which I'm not. I'm a computer guy. But I'll try. Well, so for the upstairs people, I have more t-shirts here, so you'll have to go down and look for me and ask for it. But that's it. One more and I'm done. OK. It was fun. So now, in case you still didn't wake up, you have more flashy lights. But now, let's actually really start the talk. So Angular 1. Who here has used Angular 1? Hands up. OK, I don't see anything, so it's good. I was also going to ask who liked Angular 1, but since I can see, there's no point. So Angular 1. What did you guys like about Angular 1? So the first thing is that once you learn Angular 1, it's like really, really easy to use it. So once you understand Angular 1, it's like, oh, yeah, that's a controller and a service and a factory, and that's it. It works. I don't know if you have seen the Venn Natal graphic, but it's basically like this. You start using it, it's like, oh, my God, this is like so good. Then you write your first page, and then it's like, oh, all the code that I wrote is like so bad. So I still need to learn. You learn, and then, oh, my God, the code that I wrote is so awesome. And then, no, it's not. But once you are at the top, so once you really learn it, if you have all of your team who actually knows how to code Angular 1, it's really fast to develop on it. Also, it embraced web components. So it was one of the first popular libraries, front-end libraries, that started using web components. Why quotes? Because they are not really using the web component DOM API. They're using something that is called directives. But this is how our code looks like. We have these tabs, this pane. The pane has a name. And also, we have the content. So this is actually pretty cool, because the main objective of Angular 1 was to make your code declarative. What does it mean? It means that you wanted to say what needs to be done, but not how. If you have used Bootstrap or jQuery tabs, you know that you have to specify the UL, the LI, say all of those to what are the tab names with a hash to which one they represent. Then you click on it and it's shown. And you have to specify how these tabs will work. In here, I just say, I want tabs, I want pane, and boom, it just works. And that's something really nice that Angular started doing it like 5 years ago or something like that. So that is pretty cool. And also, it gave a lot of structure to your code. So most of the front-end frameworks were not giving me structure. They were giving me like little pieces. And if you have done JavaScript, you know, I'm going to say something that you won't like, but it can be like PHP, like it can be a little messy. So the good thing about Angular is that it made you create all of these controllers, services, as I was saying, factories, directives, and that made you organize your code. And if I had good organization of my code, it's easier to maintain. And that's something really cool that came with Angular 1. And also the other thing that was like, whoa effect is a two-way data binding. So I actually recorded a video like Eric showing it. It's like you write on the text, and as soon as you write on the text, that data gets displayed. So what it's doing is it's actually creating a binding between the input type text and JavaScript variable, and then I'm creating a one-way binding from that JavaScript variable to the UI then, and that's why while I keep on writing, it works. And it's like, oh my God, two-way data binding is awesome. So all of this was like, yay, this is like super awesome. So why did they create Angular 2 if everything is like so awesome? And well, that's because there are things that you don't like about Angular 1. So there are like too many concepts to learn. So I was telling you, if you learn it, it's really easy to use, but it's like, in order to learn it, you need to learn like what a service, factory, provider, config, filter, directive, ngClick, ngMouseUp, ngSomething, scope inheritance. Well, config, you have to learn it twice. I don't know why I put it twice. But you have to relearn it. And then you have to learn the run and much, much, much more things. So all of these concepts, they are created by Angular 1. And why do I have to learn so many concepts just to do this front-end framework? Another thing is that some of the APIs were like really bad. So I show you these tabs and pane, and when you're using it, it's like, oh my God, this is like so awesome. But this is a directive API. So it's really clear that when you're saying restrict EA, it's like EA Sports or something like that, right? Really clear what this is doing. And the same for the scope. Scope is what I receive as a parameter, and I'm receiving a title at model equals onPress ampersand. Really clear API, like really easy to use. You see it and you know what's going on, right? So, and also, the best one is this link and controller. You have two functions that do almost the same thing, because one is not enough. Why not put two? And also, one of them receives the injected parameters in order, another one by name. So it's like, what? So these APIs were not that good, and they realized afterwards. And another thing is that two-way data binding, it's cool and not cool at the same time. It's cool because it generates that wow effect, like, oh my God, this is so easy. But then in order to have two-way data binding, you have to have watchers. So basically, you have to watch a variable to see if it changes, and if it changes, then render that change in the DOM. And those watchers, once you start getting a lot of them, are not good for performance, because they are doing dirty checking on every iteration of the event loop from JavaScript. So even though it's cool, it's not that cool. So it's like, this stuff is not that good from Angular 1. So Angular 2, the new horizon. So that's why they said, OK, we will rewrite Angular from scratch. So Angular 2 is a complete rewrite of Angular. It has like completely different APIs, completely different everything. But I think they're doing a better job than Angular 1 because they've learned a lot. So the first thing that is really cool, and it's something that I love about React, for example, is that there are like fewer concepts to learn. If I can learn a framework with like 2 or 3 concepts, then it's like really good, because from there I can create like building blocks that I poop, 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 and I create my app. And that's something really good to have for a framework. Also, it has easier APIs. The APIs now are much easier to understand. No more ampersands, no more equals, no more adds. And it's think as a full framework for big apps. This is like a big difference with like web components or React as well. So it's not just like a rendering engine or a component engine. What they're trying to build is a full framework for like big applications. So if you're creating like a very big application and you want some framework, some standardization, Angular 2 is for you then. And also it's like web component compliant, which is a nice thing. So I think the web component API will change because it's not good, though, let's be honest. The web component API is not good. But Angular 2 is still going to be compatible with web components API. And the nice thing about that is that if you're creating an Angular 2 app, but then you also want to create web components, you can use those web components in Angular 2. So if you created them with Polymer, you can use them with Angular 2. And that's like a really nice interoperability that you can get between some other frameworks that are working together. So let's learn what it is. The first concept we need to learn is what is a component. So a component is basically this. I don't know, is the size big enough or should I enlarge it? Large? I think it's better this. Better? Yes. Good. This is the advantage of doing the slides on the web. You can just zoom in and Chrome will take care of everything. So what is a component? Basically, it's a class that I'm exporting. It's what you see here, the person shower. And it has a couple of annotations. So this component itself will just show the information of a person. That's all it does. And I'm exporting here this class, person shower, and I'm saying it's a component using this add component in the top. This that looks like an annotation is actually an ECMAScript 7 or ECMAScript 2016 decorator. So this means that this is actually going to be part of the JavaScript language in like a year or so. And in here, I'm specifying first the selector. This is just a regular CSS selector. It's saying person shower, so this means that it will select a DOM element that's called person shower. And then it will receive, in this case, a property, which is called person. That will be the person that it needs to show. So as I was saying, these annotations are also ECMAScript 7 decorators. Then the next annotation is this view. In this view, I can specify what will be the UI for this component. I can have either a template or a template URL as well. In this case, just to show it, I'll use like an inline template, but most of the cases, you'll want to use a template URL. And in here, I'm using string interpolation, the new feature for ECMAScript 6, to actually show the string here. So what am I doing? The first line is saying name, curly brackets, person.name. So those curly brackets that you see here will create a one-way data binding from my JavaScript to the DOM to show the name of the person. That means that if the person name changes, it will change in here. But something that is nice about Angular is this is just a shorthand for the line below. So what are we doing in the line below? We're setting a DOM property. So first concept to learn from Angular 2, square brackets, some property, will set that property. So in this case, I'm setting the inner HTML property of this span to some expression. The expression in this case is location plus person.location.toString. And this is actually compatible with web components because this is just setting any DOM property. So it could be inner HTML, inner text, but if you're creating your own web component and you're exposing some property from that web component, you can use it here to set it. So square brackets sets property. Then the second concept that we're seeing here is this ngIf with an asterisk. In this case, what it will do is if the person has a nickname, it will actually display that person's nickname. But this asterisk ngIf is, again, a shorthand for just a directive. We will learn more about directives in a second, but basically a directive is like a component, but without a view. What a directive does is it adds behavior to an existing DOM element. So what this asterisk ngIf is doing, it's actually creating this template for you and setting this directive ngIf, and the behavior that it adds is just showing or hiding this particular template. Then, in this line, we're having an input type text, and we can see this hash name. That hash name is a reference. So what we're doing here is we're going to do a reference to this input type text so that we can use it later on, and we can get a value from it, either from JavaScript or from the HTML itself. So second concept, hash some name. It will let me refer to any DOM element that I want. So if instead of to refer to an input type text, I would have wanted a div or a span or anything like that, I can do it as well. And then the other thing that we see here is that we're handling the click event on the button. This button will change the person's name, so when I click on it, it will basically change it. And you're seeing here that I'm setting parentheses, click. Third concept to learn, parentheses will let me handle events. So whichever event I want to use, I just wrap it in parentheses. So it could be click, key up, key down, mouse up, mouse down. And again, the nice thing about it is that if you're creating a web component, and in your web component you're actually exporting some event, you can also handle it with these parentheses. And in this case, I'm saying that whenever it's clicked, it will call the change name function with the event that is going on right now and the name. That name is actually the input type text on the line below, above, sorry. So what I'm doing is I'm referring to the input type name from the line above and sending it as a parameter when calling this change name, because I want to get the name from there. And then in my JavaScript, I'm just creating this method for this class, which calls change name. I get the event and the name. And this code is like pretty straightforward. It just calls the prevent default, and then it changes the person name to the name.value. That name is the DOM element, the input type text, and the input type text has a value property. So I just get the value from there. This person that is here is the one that I received as a parameter when I said properties person. Whenever I receive a parameter, it's set as an instance variable. And then the last thing that I'm doing is in the constructor, I'm actually getting this age calculator service and using that to calculate the age of the person based on the year he was born. So I'm just setting it here in the constructor, specifying the type, and it works. First of all, what is that type? So types are not yet in ECMAScript 6, so how can I set the type? And it's because this code that you're seeing here is TypeScript. The nice thing about TypeScript is that it's a superset from JavaScript. So if you can do it in ECMAScript 6, you can do it in TypeScript, and it just adds more stuff like types, for example. So in this case, I'm injecting this age calculator. If I wanted to use ECMAScript 6 or 7 with Angular, I can also do it. And instead of actually setting the type like this, I would have to set it with a decorator, but it would work as well. So how am I injecting this age calculator? And that's because when I created this application, when I call this Bootstrap app, I'm using this bind feature. What this bind does, it lets me create the dependency injection, the dependency that I want to inject. So I'm saying whenever somebody wants to get an age calculator, bind age calculator to something. That something could be a class, as in this case, that is called like super fast age calculator, or it can also be a different thing. Like for example, instead of a class, I can bind it to like a type, so a string, an int. I can bind it to an instance, so I can say new my super fast calculator and then just send a random number as a parameter, or I can instantiate it to however you want. You can look for the bind docs, and in there you will see all the ways that you can bind something with the eye on Angular. So that's the component. We had like 3 concepts to learn and 2 annotations. So what is a directive then? This is a directive. It's very similar to a component. I'm also exporting a class. In this case, it's called autofocus. And then all it does is, when it's constructed, it's getting the element to which I'm adding the behavior. So check that in this case, the selector is square brackets autofocus. That will search for any element that has the attribute autofocus. So this means that this will add the behavior to any element that has this attribute. And then in the constructor, I'm getting the element reference, so the element from the DOM element, and then just saying focus, because it will autofocus. And in this case, this add directive is also an ECMAScript 7 decorator. So what is a component then? A component is the same as a directive, but with a view. The difference is that I would use a directive whenever I actually want to add behavior to something that exists. And I will use a component whenever I want to add a new component that has some HTML inside. So I actually built this example that I've just shown you the code. We can see it in action. It's on the same port as the slides. So let's come here. And in here, you can see that, well, first you can see like nothing because it's like too small, the letter. Now you can see something. It's basically my information. You can see that my design skills are awesome, like really good. And then I get the name, the age, the location, and then in here I have this change name, so Lala, change name. Now I'm called Lala. And the code, let's see it like really fast, the code. Let's increase here the letter a little bit, so 23. Okay, does it read? Okay, I take it as yes. So in this case, I'm creating this, I'm bootstrapping the application that I was also showing before, and these injectables will be the bind that I showed you before. I've organized it a little bit better. So it's like bind HCalculator to class HCalculator, and it's a regular class, this service that just has a constructor and has this calculate method that I will use in my components. This is the person shower component. It receives the properties person. It has the template in here. And the only difference that you will see from my code that I abbreviated to make it easier is that I define the instance variables here, since it's TypeScript. I'm setting this public age calculator. And actually, in order to calculate the age, instead of doing just the first time on the constructor, I'm calculating the age again every time that any of the properties that I receive changes. So if the person changes, I change the age. So for that, I can use this onChange lifecycle hook. And that's mostly it for the example. I will show you in a minute where you can get the code, the slides, and some more information. So let me kill Webpack and start this again. Wow. Okay. So I'll leave this like 1 minute, but basically, if you want to get the code example that I've just shown you, which is actually on GitHub, these slides and a few other information, like cool videos to learn about Angular 2 and stuff like that, you can just go to this URL. I leave it like 10 more seconds if you want to take a picture or something. Okay, so that's all. Thank you for having me, and